Imagine waking up and everything just flows. You feel light, clear, like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. But sometimes, the tiniest, most unassuming thing in your own home can quietly block that flow. Like an old habit you've forgotten, or a belief you've just kind of tossed aside. Let me tell you what I saw with my own eyes. In a little, tucked away corner of an old European cottage. You know those old cottages? The kind that have been in the family for ages, passed down through grandmas and great uncles? They just feel like time kind of paused inside them, right? Like there are all these whispers and secrets just living in the very stone walls, in the wooden beams. My great-aunt Alara's cottage, way out in the remote Scottish Highlands, was exactly like that. And tucked right behind the kitchen door, there was this small, dark pantry. It wasn't big or fancy, just a simple space. But it always felt a bit heavy, you know? Not like, oh, there's a ghost in here heavy, but more like the air itself was just thicker, denser, even when it was spotless, like a deep sigh stuck in the room. It looked totally harmless, of course. Just a pantry for storing jams and old preserves. But I just couldn't shake off this feeling that something intangible was living there. Something really, really old. Kind of lived and breathed in that little space. Like it was the quiet keeper of the cottage's deepest, most whispered secrets, just waiting for someone to notice. Have you ever felt a spot like that in your own home? A place that just feels different? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And keep listening, because this story might just feel really familiar. You know that feeling, right? When you wake up and something just feels off, like you're dragging your feet or things just aren't clicking into place. It's like you're trying to push water uphill, and it's just exhausting. You're trying your best, but everything feels like a struggle. A constant uphill battle. Ugh, it's the worst, isn't it? Well, in so many old European stories and wisdom, this idea of things not flowing smoothly, it's not always some big, dramatic problem that screams for attention. Oh no, it's much more subtle than that. It often just whispers to you, showing up in these tiny, almost unnoticeable ways, gently nudging you to see where things might be stuck, or maybe where some really precious, good stuff has just been completely forgotten about over time. And the wildest thing is, what usually blocks this good, easy flow, it's almost always something we put there ourselves, right? Like, without even a second thought. Maybe it's that pile of old junk mail that's been sitting by the door forever, or that coat you haven't worn in years just hanging there, taking up space. Or, in this particular story, it was just forgetting about a simple, almost childlike old custom that people used to swear by for good fortune. It's like we accidentally put up these little, invisible barriers, and then we're left scratching our heads, wondering why on earth everything suddenly feels so heavy and hard. And once I kinda tuned into that, once I really truly noticed how these little things could build up, wow, I just couldn't unsee it anymore. It was like a light bulb went off, especially when I went to visit my friend Liam in his new flat in Dublin. Boy, was that an eye-opener. So, my friend Liam, he just moved into this cute little flat in Dublin. It had good light, a decent size, nothing really wrong with it on paper. But from the moment he moved in, he kept saying his apartment just felt heavy. Not like scary heavy or haunted heavy. Nope, just stagnant. Like the air itself hadn't moved in years, even when all his windows were wide open on a breezy day. He'd try to clean, try to rearrange things, but that feeling just lingered, a low hum of unease. He'd wake up feeling tired, even after a full night's sleep. Little things at work would constantly go wrong. He just felt stuck, like he was walking through treacle. He kept blaming his job, or the gloomy Dublin weather, or just adulting in general. But I kept thinking back to that feeling in my aunt's old cottage, that subtle block, and then it hit me. It wasn't some big dramatic problem. It wasn't his job, or even the general clutter he had. It was this tiny, unsuspecting spot right by his main entrance. You know, where you usually kick off your shoes? He had just tossed his old keys there, a pile of forgotten mail from weeks ago, and his chipped, dusty little bowl. He couldn't even remember what that bowl was for anymore. It was just there. A small, seemingly meaningless spot, but it was completely blocking the natural, welcoming energy of his home, without him ever even realizing it. Like a little dam holding back a river. And man, that got me thinking. This wasn't just about moving furniture or tidying up. This was something way deeper, something truly ancient. It was about how things, even small things, could hold energy, for better or worse. And it reminded me of something very old, something about salt. And man, that got me thinking. This wasn't just about moving furniture or tidying up. This was something way deeper, something truly ancient. It was about how things, even small things, could hold energy, for better or worse. And it reminded me of something very old, something about salt. You know, this idea that your home kind of breathes, and that how things are laid out can seriously affect your luck or your well-being. That's not just some new age trend. Oh no. Ancient cultures all over the world, even right here in Europe, they totally knew about this. They truly believed their homes weren't just buildings. They had a kind of life force, a flow that could either bring you good stuff or, well, kinda drag you down. And what's super fascinating is how they used everyday things to help that flow. Take salt, for example. In ancient Europe, salt wasn't just something you sprinkled on your food, or even just white gold that dictated wealth and power, though it was that too. It was also used for deep, symbolic cleansing. People would sprinkle it around homes to ward off bad vibes or illness, believing it could purify the air and the spirit. From Roman soldiers getting paid in salarium, which is where our word salary comes from. How cool is that? To sailors throwing salt overboard for good luck, or even just a tiny pinch sprinkled at a new doorstep to protect and invite in prosperity. Salt was truly revered. But in our modern homes today, shamefully, we've often completely overlooked that deep, ancient power, reducing it to just a kitchen staple. We totally forgot its magic. So, the big question is, how do we bring back that ancient respect for salt's power? How do we let it help us cleanse our space and invite in better flow without turning our homes into some dusty old museum? So, what did Liam actually do to finally shake things up in his flat? Well, you might be thinking he had to call in some expensive expert, or tear down walls, or buy a whole new set of super fancy furniture, right? Absolutely not. That's truly the coolest part about tapping into this kind of ancient wisdom. It's almost never about huge, drastic, complicated changes that make your head spin. It's often about those small, incredibly intentional acts that surprisingly create the biggest ripple effect. All he really focused on was that tiny, previously stagnant corner we kept talking about, right by his main door, the spot that just felt so heavy and stuck. First, he gave it a really, really good clean. He carefully cleared out all those forgotten old keys that had been lying there for ages, that pile of ancient ignored mail, and that weird chipped bowl that had just sat there, gathering dust forever. Just the simple act of getting rid of that clutter already felt like a mini-win, a refreshing little breath of fresh air for that exact spot. It instantly felt lighter. Then came the next step, which was so unbelievably simple, yet incredibly powerful. He found a small, clear glass bowl. Honestly, just a regular one. Something you probably have in your own kitchen cabinet. Absolutely nothing fancy or mystical required. He then gently, almost reverently, poured some pure, sparkling sea salt into the bottom. Just enough to cover it nicely, creating a beautiful, clean white layer that looked so inviting. And then, slowly, carefully, he filled it up with fresh, crystal clear water. That was it. Can you believe how straightforward that is? He just placed this little bowl there, letting the salt slowly dissolve over time, quietly, doing its purifying thing in that once neglected corner. It wasn't a big, dramatic ceremony at all. It was just a quiet, almost meditative act, a heartfelt way of acknowledging something really old and pure, almost like inviting a forgotten, good energy to come back and truly settle into his space. He wasn't doing it because he believed in some magic spell. He was doing it because it felt instinctively right, a simple nod to those age-old beliefs about salt's incredible cleansing power. Honestly, he didn't really expect anything dramatic or instant to happen. He just thought, hey, why not give it a try? What have I got to lose? It can't hurt, right? He just let it sit there, quietly doing its work in that once overlooked spot. But the apartment, oh my goodness, the apartment totally responded, in its own wonderfully subtle, gentle way, almost like it had been holding its breath for ages and could finally, blissfully, sigh in relief. You are seriously not going to believe what happened next. Just a mere 2 days later, after Liam had placed that incredibly simple bowl of salt and water in his corner, can you even imagine? An old client he hadn't heard from, in what felt like absolute ages, suddenly, out of the blue, sent him an email. This client, who he'd honestly thought had completely, utterly forgotten about him, was now offering a brand new, super exciting project that had been stuck in limbo, just gathering dust, for what felt like months. It was a small financial boost, sure, but, oh my goodness, it arrived exactly when he needed it most. Like a perfect, unexpected little gift from out of nowhere. A real stroke of luck. And it wasn't just about the money. Oh no, not at all. Liam told me, with this amazed look on his face, that his sleep had gotten so much deeper, unbelievably deeper. He stopped waking up with that nagging, underlying feeling of restlessness and tiredness that had been plaguing him for what seemed like forever. It was like he'd finally found a proper off switch for his constantly buzzing mind. He'd just sleep right through the night, completely undisturbed, waking up feeling incredibly light, utterly refreshed, and genuinely ready to tackle the day. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so genuinely well-rested. He even told me, the apartment, it just feels like it's breathing a huge, contented sigh of relief now, you know? It's wild. The air inside just feels cleaner, noticeably lighter, somehow more vibrant and alive. It's so strange, he admitted, but he felt way, way more settled, more grounded, like he was truly ready to confidently face whatever came his way in life. That old, heavy, stagnant feeling, poof, completely, utterly gone. It was replaced by a quiet sense of possibility. And maybe, just maybe, that's where true wealth really begins. Not with desperately chasing more, but with your personal space finally moving freely, finally breathing easily, and genuinely allowing good things to flow right back into your life. So, maybe it's not just about all the things crammed into your space. It's truly about the way those things, or even those forgotten customs, are either holding on to energy, or worse, holding it back. It's about letting your home truly breathe. If you feel that subtle heaviness too, that quiet sense of something being a little bit stuck in your own space, maybe try inviting a little bit of this ancient wisdom back into your life. Or just sit quietly with your space for a moment and truly listen. What does it need to finally breathe and to allow all that good flow to rush in?